Nike wasn't ready for this. Not the servers, not the warehouses, not even the executives at the top of the company. When Shedeur Sanders' first official Nike merch finally went live, people expected a strong rookie launch. What nobody expected was chaos. Within minutes, systems slowed to a crawl, products vanished from inventory, and reports started flooding in about sellouts happening before some stores even opened their doors. This wasn't a normal release. This was a full-blown disruption that caught the entire sports industry off guard. And here's the wild part. This didn't just hit football fans. It pulled in Gen Z buyers, international shoppers, and even audiences that usually ignore NFL merchandise completely. Suddenly, Shedeur Sanders wasn't just trending on sports pages. He was dominating fashion timelines, resale platforms, and brand conversations across the internet. Behind the scenes, insiders say emergency meetings were called. Executives were staring at live sales data in disbelief. Questions started flying. How did a rookie quarterback generate this level of demand? Why were veteran stars getting outpaced in hours? And most importantly, what did this mean for the future of athlete branding? Because this wasn't just about jerseys and hoodies. This was about influence. It was about culture. And it was about a shift in how young athletes build power long before they ever step into their prime. So how did Shedeur Sanders pull this off? What really happened inside Nike when the numbers started exploding? And why are rival brands suddenly scrambling to catch up? Let's break it down. The moment the SS Crown collection went live, everything changed. Nike had prepared for a strong opening. Internal projections expected steady traffic, solid conversion rates, and a typical rookie surge. What they got instead was a digital stampede. Within the first hour, demand exploded so fast that Nike's servers reportedly began lagging under the pressure. Shoppers were stuck refreshing pages, carts emptied themselves, and limited items vanished before many fans even realized the drop had started. Distribution centers felt it next. Inventory that was supposed to last days disappeared in hours. West Coast stores hadn't even unlocked their doors yet, and internal reports were already flagging shortages. Employees were scrambling to reroute shipments between warehouses, trying to keep product flowing while orders stacked up faster than systems could process them. Inside Nike headquarters, the situation turned serious. Emergency meetings were called. Live sales dashboards were pulled up on big screens. Executives watched numbers spike in real time, blowing past daily targets before lunchtime. According to industry chatter, even Nike's top leadership wanted answers. When the founder of a global brand starts asking how a rookie merch launch overwhelmed distribution nationwide, you know something historic just happened. And this wasn't just about revenue. It was about speed. Sanders' merch wasn't slowly building momentum. It detonated instantly. The kind of surge usually reserved for once-in-a-generation sneaker drops or celebrity collaborations. But the sales numbers were only the beginning. Because when analysts started digging deeper into who was actually buying this merch, the real shock was just getting started. When Nike finally stabilized the system and started reviewing customer data, that's when executives realized this launch wasn't normal at all. The crowd buying Shedeur Sanders merch didn't match the traditional NFL fan profile. It was younger, more global, more diverse, and far more culture-driven than anyone predicted. Generation Z showed up in waves. These are the same consumers who usually ignore standard team jerseys and league-branded gear. But Sanders' drop pulled them in fast. His logo, his branding, and his digital presence turned football merchandise into lifestyle fashion. To many buyers, this wasn't about supporting a rookie quarterback. It was about wearing a movement. Then came the international surge. Orders poured in from Europe and Asia at levels Nike rarely sees during a rookie's first week. That kind of global demand is typically reserved for superstar athletes or music icons. Yet here it was, happening in real time around a player who hadn't even taken his first official NFL snap. Even more surprising was the gender split. Reports suggested women accounted for nearly 40% of early purchases, shattering Nike's usual male-dominated football apparel numbers. That alone forced internal teams to rethink how they market athletes moving forward. Suddenly, Sanders wasn't just selling jerseys. He was expanding the entire customer base. And that's when Nike realized something bigger was happening. This wasn't hype. This was cultural penetration. But here's the part most people missed. This explosion didn't happen overnight. It was built years before this launch ever went live. What made this moment so powerful is that it wasn't accidental. Long before the cameras, the contracts, and the Nike rollout, Shedeur Sanders was quietly building something most athletes never think about until it's too late. While others focused only on highlight reels, he treated his personal brand like a startup company. Every post, every appearance, every interaction was intentional. During his college years, Sanders created a constant behind-the-scenes stream of content, training sessions, locker room moments, lifestyle clips, motivational messages. Instead of feeling polished and corporate, it felt real. Fans didn't see a manufactured superstar. They saw someone growing in real time. That authenticity created emotional buy-in, and emotional buy-in turns into loyalty. He also understood something critical about modern audiences. Attention is currency, and he didn't wait for traditional media to control the narrative. He spoke directly to fans, built his own platform, controlled his story. By the time Nike came calling, he already had an audience that trusted him, not just followed him. That's why the SS Crown logo didn't feel like another corporate design slapped on a hoodie. It felt like something fans had already accepted as part of his identity. When the merch dropped, people weren't discovering the brand. They were finally getting access to it. And this is where it gets interesting. Because while Nike benefited from this momentum, their competitors were watching from the outside and realizing they had just missed a massive opportunity. The moment Sanders' sales numbers started leaking beyond Nike's internal dashboards, the reaction across the industry was immediate. And it wasn't celebration, it was panic. Adidas reportedly called emergency strategy meetings within 24 hours. Executives were forced to confront a brutal reality. Nike saw Sanders first, locked him in early, and everyone else got left behind. Under Armour, known for aggressively chasing young talent, accelerated its scouting pipeline almost overnight. According to insiders, timelines that normally stretched across seasons were suddenly compressed into weeks. Brands started looking deeper into college programs, high school circuits, and social platforms, desperate to identify the next athlete with crossover potential before Nike could strike again. Even companies outside the traditional Big Three felt the shockwave. New Balance began reevaluating its North American athlete strategy, focusing less on pure performance metrics and more on cultural influence. Puma reportedly re-examined its entire regional growth plan after realizing how fragile market position becomes when a single athlete can tilt consumer behavior this hard. For years, endorsement deals moved slowly. Brands competed cautiously. Campaigns were safe, predictable, calculated. Sanders' launch shattered that rhythm. Suddenly, the race wasn't about incremental gains. It became about survival. And that's when another problem surfaced. Because while Nike was celebrating the win, they also realized something uncomfortable. The contract they signed with Sanders might already be outdated. Behind the scenes, Nike wasn't just celebrating record numbers. They were scrambling. Sanders' original endorsement deal was aggressive for a rookie, but it was built around projections, not reality. And reality blew those projections apart in less than 72 hours. Sources say Sanders' contract included performance bonuses, merchandise royalties, and milestone triggers designed to activate over time. The problem? Those milestones were crushed almost instantly. Revenue thresholds that were supposed to take months were hit in days. Internal targets that once seemed optimistic suddenly looked conservative. That forced urgent conversations. Sanders, representatives reportedly moved fast, opening discussions about restructuring the deal before the first launch week even ended. The goal wasn't just more money. It was long-term control, expanded royalties, and brand equity positioning that usually takes athletes years to earn. What shocked industry insiders even more was Nike's response. There was no resistance, no slowdown. Instead, executives began treating Sanders less like a rookie endorsement and more like a franchise-level investment. Not just footwear, not just jerseys, but cultural leverage. For decades, athletes were expected to prove themselves on the field before unlocking elite brand treatment. Sanders flipped that order. His market impact forced Nike to pay for influence, not just performance. And that sent a powerful message across the industry. The game had changed. But here's the part that really matters. Massive sales only mean something if the athlete can sustain attention. And that's where Sanders did something most hype-driven stars fail to do. He backed it up on the field. Hype can move product, but performance keeps it alive. And this is where Shedeur Sanders separated himself from the typical viral athlete cycle. While social media buzz exploded, coaches and analysts quietly started noticing something else. His football wasn't matching rookie expectations. It was exceeding them. Reports from camp described Sanders as calm, efficient, and dangerous under pressure. Completion percentages stayed high. Decision-making looked advanced. Footwork sharpened faster than expected. And when plays broke down, he didn't panic, he created. That's the difference between noise and real momentum. Film review only strengthened the narrative. Deep throws dropped with precision. Tight window passes delivered on time. Scramble drills turning chaos into opportunity. The kind of composure that can't be taught, and fans noticed. Because nothing kills a brand faster than empty performance. This is why his merchandise didn't cool off after launch weekend. It accelerated. Fans weren't just buying a name, they were buying into belief. Every highlight reinforced the story. Every strong practice report fueled confidence. And every on-field moment validated the cultural wave behind him. But Sanders' influence didn't stop at football. Something else was happening quietly in the background. His brand identity started evolving into something much bigger than a jersey number. And that's where the real long-term power kicked in. Every iconic athlete brand needs a symbol. Something simple, recognizable, and emotionally loaded. For Shedeur Sanders, that symbol became the SS crown. And once it hit the market, it stopped being just a logo and started acting like a cultural badge. Nike designers reportedly went through more than a dozen variations before Sanders signed off on the final version. The goal wasn't flashy, it was meaning. The interlocked letters, the subtle crown framing, the clean lines, everything was built to communicate confidence without leaning too hard on legacy. It nodded to greatness, but it stood on its own. And fans immediately understood it. The logo spread fast across social media, fashion pages, and streetwear communities. Influencers paired Sanders' gear with luxury fits. TikTok edits turned the crown into a visual staple. It wasn't just worn at games anymore. It showed up in everyday culture. That's when the shift happened. Sanders stopped being viewed strictly as a quarterback and started being seen as a movement. Young fans weren't just supporting a player. They were adopting an identity tied to ambition, self-belief, and modern confidence. And here's the wild part. Much of this growth happened organically. No massive ad push, no forced campaigns, just resonance, which made rival brands even more uncomfortable. Because once a symbol becomes culture, it becomes extremely hard to compete with. But that momentum was about to face its biggest test yet. The real-world retail explosion that turned hype into chaos. The digital storm was only the beginning. Once Sanders' merchandise hit physical Nike stores, things escalated fast. Flagship locations from New York to Los Angeles were transformed almost overnight into Sanders showcase zones. Window displays featured massive SS crown visuals. Mannequins wore exclusive colorways. Interactive stations let customers customize gear on the spot. Store managers described scenes that felt closer to sneaker drops than football merchandise launches. Lines wrapped around city blocks. Shelves emptied within hours. Employees weren't just ringing up sales, they were managing crowds. One Nike flagship reportedly recorded its highest single-day revenue in store history during the first wave of Sanders merchandise. And the chaos didn't stop inside stores. On resale platforms, Sanders gear started trading like limited edition collectibles. Certain pieces jumped into triple-digit premiums. Buyers treated hoodies and jerseys like assets. Social media amplified everything. Unboxing videos flooded feeds. Celebrities casually wore Sanders gear without paid partnerships. The hype loop fed itself. What made this different was scale. This wasn't local buzz. It was global movement. From Europe to Asia, fans who had never watched an NFL snap were suddenly wearing Sanders apparel. That level of crossover forced the entire industry to rethink what a rookie athlete could actually become. But as momentum exploded, one uncomfortable question began circulating behind closed doors. Could this level of hype actually last? What happened next caught even Nike by surprise. Once Sanders gear fully entered circulation, the resale market ignited almost instantly. Platforms like SHOCKS and secondary marketplaces began seeing Sanders merchandise listed at prices normally reserved for rare sneaker collaborations. Hoodies doubled. Limited drops tripled. Some collectors treated early releases like investment pieces instead of sports apparel. And this wasn't artificial hype. Demand was real. Buyers who missed official drops rushed to resale sites just to get their hands on anything with the SS crown attached. That urgency created scarcity pressure, which only pushed prices higher. Suddenly, Sanders gear wasn't just fashion, it became a status symbol. Retail employees reported something even more unusual. Customers weren't coming in for one item. They were buying bundles. Jerseys, hats, accessories, bags, entire collections moving in single transactions. Parents were shopping for kids. Influencers were stocking content closets. Fans were preparing outfits before games even started. Social media poured gasoline on the fire. Videos of store lines going viral. TikTok unboxings stacking millions of views. Instagram stories showing sold-out racks and empty shelves. Every post created more demand. Every clip turned curiosity into action. What made this moment different from previous athlete launches was consistency. Usually resale spikes fade after opening weekend. Sanders' prices didn't dip. They stabilized at higher levels. That signaled something deeper. This wasn't a temporary hype cycle. It was market behavior shifting in real time. And inside industry boardrooms, executives started asking a dangerous question. If a rookie quarterback can move markets like this, what happens when his brand fully matures? With momentum exploding across retail, resale, and social media, the conversation inside executive offices shifted fast. The hype was undeniable, but so was the pressure, because history isn't kind to viral sports moments. Plenty of athletes have burned bright early, only to cool off once the spotlight got heavier and expectations multiplied. Now Sanders sits in a different category. Every throw matters. Every performance gets magnified. A strong game fuels momentum. A rough outing invites headlines questioning whether the brand was inflated. That's the double edge of being more than an athlete. The spotlight never turns off. Critics argue this surge could slow down once novelty fades. They point to past rookies who exploded early before leveling out. But supporters see something different with Sanders. His brand wasn't built overnight. It wasn't manufactured during one hot season. It was layered over years through direct fan engagement, consistent storytelling, and cultural awareness. That's the key difference. Fans today don't demand perfection. They demand authenticity. Sanders doesn't move like a polished corporate product. He moves like someone comfortable being himself. That relatability keeps audiences locked in even during adversity. Still, the pressure is real. Every social post gets dissected. Every on-field moment feeds the narrative machine. The question now isn't whether Sanders can sell merchandise. He already proved that. The real question is whether he can turn this moment into something lasting. And that answer won't just shape his career. It might reshape the future blueprint of athlete branding entirely. What started as a simple merch launch turned into a full-blown cultural shockwave. Shedeur Sanders didn't just move product. He forced Nike, rival brands, and the entire sports marketing world to rethink how power is built in the modern era. In a matter of days, he went from promising rookie to market disruptor. That doesn't happen by accident. This wasn't luck. It was years of brand building, authentic fan connection, and understanding culture better than most veterans ever do. Sanders proved that today's athletes don't need to wait for championships to matter. Influence now comes from identity, relatability, and the ability to connect beyond the field. Nike saw it early. They bet on authenticity instead of tradition, and that gamble paid off fast. Meanwhile, competitors were left scrambling, trying to reverse engineer something that can't be copied overnight. Because culture doesn't move on contracts, it moves on connection. Now Sanders faces his biggest test yet, turning a viral moment into a lasting movement, sustaining performance, protecting the brand, carrying pressure without losing authenticity. If he pulls that off, this won't be remembered as a rookie success story. It will be remembered as the moment sports marketing officially entered a new era. And here's the real question moving forward. Was this just the beginning? Or did the industry just witness the birth of the next global sports icon?